Alright, man. Episode 4 or maybe 3, depending on how you're listening to this. I should bring this to my face. Episode 3 or 4, depending on the order we actually decide to release it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not sure which story to tell first yet. What are you leaning towards?
I would assume episode 4, just to make it easier for my brain.
Episode 4.
Because we're recording this as episode 4.
We're recording it as the 4th one, as you heard from the man himself. So again, introduction, I'm Mac.
I'm Ola.
And yeah, today we're going to talk to you about the journey of coming to Canada. So how we even got to what would be the beginning of the previous episode, where we talked about our journey so far and like how our careers went and how we got into the line of work that we're working on now. And now this is how we actually got to even have that opportunity, I guess, the platform, the foundation of it all, which was coming to Canada from our respective countries. So as a reminder, I'm from Tanzania, Ola's from Nigeria. We both had to go through the typical education, immigration, and make our way over here. We both landed in Newfoundland, and then from there we started building. And yeah, today we'll tell you kind of the history behind that, how that all happened. We can even talk about why Newfoundland, because that's usually a pretty rare choice in itself.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't know about it before we started. But yeah, I'll tell my story when it's my turn. But yeah, Ola, I'd love to hear your story, man. Let's begin with you.
Newfoundland. My story started from London.
London.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it actually started when I was like 10.
So what's your tie with London?
Yeah, well, first of all, UK, Britain, they colonized Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I think Nigeria has a bit of a Stockholm syndrome where
it comes to that.
They just keep going back to London. So I have a lot of family there.
There are a lot of Nigerians in the UK in general, right?
I have a lot. It's like my second home. Well, one of them now anyways. But yeah, it's I have a lot of family in London. And at that time, my sister used to live in London.
Okay.
But yeah, even it actually goes back all the way to I was 10.
Okay.
So when I was 10, this was after a different story, but my parents split and then my mom had to raise us. We barely had enough money. I was a dreamer, right? So I used to tell my siblings that none of us was going to school in Nigeria. And they used to look at me like, this kid is delusional. So,
okay, let's actually talk about that a little bit, because that's usually the catalyst for anybody even emigrating for education purposes. So I think that's a useful backdrop to go into a little bit. So like even at that age, you knew that you didn't want to go to school in Nigeria. So like, how did you arrive at this, and like how were you thinking about that?
I have no idea. I already a family that lived there, so I knew people there. But I don't know. I was just a different weird kid. Like the way my mannerism didn't fit in with Nigeria. I didn't eat a lot of Nigerian food. I was always eating like pizza and like fries. Like even when we didn't have a lot of money in Nigeria. So my mom always said, well, my mom didn't say much. But she just let me do whatever I wanted to do. But anyone that met me, like my cousins and everything, they always told my mom, they're like, this kid doesn't belong here.
What's going on with this kid?
But yeah, I used to tell, I don't know, it was just very clear in my mind. Like it was like I could see it. And I actually laughed a few years ago because the image that I was seeing, it wasn't exactly the same, but it was like it happened. It was crazy.
That's interesting.
Like you can call that manifestation, but it's wild how much that happened. But yeah, I remember one night I was telling my siblings and they were all laughing. They were like, man, like, what are you saying? Get away from here. And I went and told my mom. And my mom was just like, oh, is that what you think? I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, yeah. Pray that it happens. Like she never discouraged anything. She's just like, whatever you want to do, we'll find a way to make it happen.
Make it happen.
So then I, lived my life, went to high school, blah, blah, blah. Then when I was 13, I started spending my summers in the UK. So I would go, I spend more time in the UK than Nigeria actually. Like I will go there as soon as I finish exams in Nigeria, before I even get my results back.
You would be out.
I'll be out.
And so this would be your holiday break after
my holiday break,
school. And like your cousins and stuff like that at this time, are they also kind of out of school at the same time?
Sometimes they're not out of school yet, so I'll just be at home hanging out playing video games or whatever. And then there's a little one that was, he was like 5 or whatever, or 6, I don't know. Then I used to like pick him up from school because his older brother is like an hour away.
Yeah, so that's some different.
Yeah, so I used to be like, I would drop him off in school,
Yeah.
drop him home, and then I'll watch TV all day, watch Disney Channel all day.
Okay.
And yeah, that was my summers, and the school would resume like 3 weeks a month before I resume, because I was like, I was a troublemaker in school. Like I was one of those kids. I would read the entire textbook, and then I'll be asking teachers like silly
quizzing
questions.
them instead.
Yeah. So my mom, I guess she kind of figured out a way like to make me, just stay behind so that I have to play catch up instead of disturbing people. So that worked. So I ended up spending more time in the UK, I guess, than I was in Nigeria.
Okay.
And
at that age, when you're going over to the UK, you're obviously noticing some pretty big differences between back home and the UK. Did that reinforce your desire to go study somewhere else? Like, how did that early experience with the UK affect, like, I guess your imagination of the future?
It actually ruined it. I didn't enjoy my time in the UK at that time.
Yeah.
Because my aunt, we are good now, but at that time she was super strict, and she made me dislike the UK.
Yeah.
She was so controlling. Yeah. So I actually didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
But I know I didn't fit in Nigeria as well. So I was in this very strange world where I didn't fit in anywhere. I didn't fit in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And when I go back to Nigeria, I had a British accent at that time for some reason. Yeah. And my Nigerian friends used to make fun of me like, oh, who do you think you are? You think you're better than us, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I didn't fit in with my friends that much as well. Yeah. So I was in this limbo. But anyways, I did finish high school. I barely even paid attention to my entrance exams to go to university because I knew I didn't want to stay in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what the next move was, but I just knew it wasn't Nigeria. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I didn't want to go to London. Yep. And I went to New York, and my uncle in New York, he mentioned I can stay with him. Yep. That sounded like a fun idea until one Friday night we went to freaking night vigil.
What, night vigil?
Yeah, like I don't know if you have that in Tanzania, but in Nigeria where you like stay up all night praying.
Nah, I don't know about that. Maybe some people do that, but I've never been a part of that.
Yeah, it was like this, you stay up all night praying. And I was there on vacation, and there I was all night praying, and I wasn't like very religious even at a young age. Yep. So even though my family was very religious, Christian, Muslim, whatever, but it just wasn't for me. Yep. So I was just like, no, this is not it. I'm not staying here. So I went back to Nigeria. Yep. I didn't know what I wanted to do. At that time, I picked up a bunch of softwares. I mentioned that last time. Photoshop, Maya, Autodesk, music production stuff. So that was what I was doing for my pastime, just making friends over the internet, just making beats and whatnot. And I had a girlfriend then, she was my girlfriend in high school. And we actually broke up because she was moving. Part of the reason was because she was moving. And she was moving to Canada. Oh, interesting. And I didn't have any idea I knew what Canada was, kind of. Yeah. But as not really. Yeah. I have an uncle or cousin. Yeah. I knew I had a cousin there, but I didn't think much about it. But anyways, she said she was going to Canada. So it wasn't gonna work. I was sad that time. Yeah. And then my cousin came to Nigeria and he came to visit. And then he was telling my mom, he was like, oh, once again, back to the thing I said earlier on, it was like, oh, this kid doesn't fit here. Yeah. Like, you have to find a way to, make him go somewhere. It's like, oh, you should come to Canada. And then my mom was like, oh, maybe she'll talk to me. And then she talked to me, and I was like, wait, Canada? Wait. Then I talked to my ex-girlfriend, I was like, wait, where are you again? She was like, Canada. I was like, oh, perfect, sign me up, I'm going. At this time, I thought Canada was a small country.
A place you could actually.
I was thinking it was like this tiny country. So she was in Hamilton. Yep. And so I was like, okay, fine, I will go to Canada. Yep. But the problem was at this point, I had been home for like a year after high school. Yep. I actually finished high school at 16. Yep. But this time I was already 17, and I don't know. I felt like I was old at that time, but now thinking about it, it's like so young. Like, but I didn't want to stay too long. I had actually applied for a Canadian visa to visit. I got denied actually. Yeah, I don't know why. Visas. Yeah, I got denied the visa.
We're talking about visas a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, I got denied the visa, which makes no sense because I'd been going to the UK a lot. I'd gone to the US, but I got denied. So my cousin as a friend or had a friend at that time who was in Newfoundland who ran a travel agency.
Yeah. Okay.
So my cousin was like, "Oh, maybe he can help you reapply."
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up engaging the guy, and then through the process, he was like, "Oh, I know you want to go to Calgary, which is where my cousin was.
Yep.
But instead of waiting till September, you can actually start earlier because Memorial University in Newfoundland, where I am, they have spring admissions. So if you want to start in May, you can do that as well."
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up applying to Memorial University.
Yep.
I got admission, and my visa came in April, and Canada said it expired 3 weeks from then.
Whoa.
So I didn't even have time to think, do I want to go to Newfoundland or not? It was just like I literally had 3 weeks to get out of Nigeria to go to Newfoundland.
Okay, so your visa would allow you to stay in Canada longer, but you had like a 3-week window to make a decision.
I had study permit and visa. So my visa expired in 3 weeks, which means I have to be in Canada in 3 weeks or it expires.
Gotcha.
But my study permit was like 3 years or 2 years or whatever.
Okay, yeah, following.
Yeah. So I ended up coming to, actually my study permit was a year. And the reason for that was because my passport was expiring.
Okay.
So there was a complication there somewhere.
Yep.
I even had to like get an extension or something. It was madness.
Yep.
So anyways, I didn't even tell anyone. It was like on my way to the airport. That's when I ended up calling my friends, tell them that I was moving to Canada.
Things were happening quick.
Yeah, I didn't even tell my girlfriend or ex-girlfriend at the time who I was going to meet in Canada because I thought, I was going to surprise her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up looking on Google, looking at Newfoundland, Canada, seeing what I would expect. Yeah. All the pictures that I was seeing was Vancouver.
Yep.
So I thought Canada was going to be Vancouver.
Yeah.
So then I came to Canada. Right away I got out of the airport, I was like, oh my God, like, this is not the Vancouver that I was seeing, but okay, whatever. I ended up just staying there. The plan was to stay there for like 1 or 2 semesters and then transfer to Calgary. But then as soon as I came to Canada, I realized that that complication with my passport. So I had to like renew that and figure all of that stuff. So I was okay, maybe I'll stay for 1 year, figure that out, and then move to Calgary. Yep. I got to Newfoundland for the first time in my life. I was free. Remember, I wasn't that free in the UK. In Nigeria, my mom was kind of protective as well. Yep. So I had the freedom. I was this 17-year-old about to turn 18. I ended up DJing. I was living by myself. So life was good. So I ended up just staying in Newfoundland, and one thing led to another. Tough times happened in life. I ended up in a relationship and so many things. So I had reasons to stay in Newfoundland over the years, and before I knew it, I was there for 10 years. Yeah,
time flies, huh?
I was there for 10 years, and then once I got my permanent residence and I got my first job in tech, after a year or 18 months of working there, I transferred over to. I came to Vancouver, which was the original promised land. Yeah,
the one you saw in the images.
Yeah, the one the Canada that was sold to me.
The Vision Board one, the Vision Board Canada. Yeah. So, question about the permanent residency. Yeah. What program did you use to get to that?
Well, when I was done with Memorial, I also started my company. Yeah. So that was I can't remember what it was called then. I started with my co-founder. Yeah. I can't remember the exact name then, but yeah. What's the name now? I can't remember, but that was when they were encouraging people to stay after university to start businesses. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Not provincial nominee because I didn't want to stay in.
Yeah, because that would lock you there, right? Down, yeah. Yeah. I had the same kind of cut.
Did you do provincial nominee?
No, I didn't. But I will tell you as I tell you my story. So we actually have some similarities in the story quite a bit. As you were telling it, I was like recognizing some parts from my story as well. So I went to high school in Tanzania, and the high school that I went to was this. It's called International School Moshi, which is like a very like mixed school. There's a lot of like kids from expats. Expats, for those of you who don't know, are essentially international people who come to countries for one reason or another. You can find them anywhere. I'm sure there's expats. Yeah. Oh, cool. It stands for expatriates or something like that. I don't really understand the history of the term itself, but it refers usually to like international people coming to a place and just like living and working there. we're technically expats, but they don't typically use that term for like anybody other than Western culture people.
Right.
Like expats are usually like the miners who are like living in Tanzania, but they're really like from South Africa or from the UK or whatever it may be. They call them all expats. But a lot of them were actually like UN representatives and things like that. So I went to school with a lot of kids who were like their family. That's what they did. They're like UN people, and they like usually moved around a little bit from station to station. Some people like came over and were managing some factories that were there, and their kids would go to that school. So it was like a mixed bag of a lot of different people. Like one of my best friends growing up was Nepalese, just to give you an idea of how random some of the people there was. And a lot of the teachers there were Canadian, funny enough, and they were in Tanzania for one reason or another. But the international school, it's like there's a bunch of international schools throughout the world, and a lot of them are usually teachers from different countries, and I think it's pretty easy to transfer from school to school. So that's how you end up having a pretty international teaching group that's there. But for some reason, a lot of Canadians gravitated to like my one, ISM, and so I had some idea of what like Canadians were like, but I didn't really know much about Canada. Like I wasn't exposed to a lot of that stuff at the time. So anyhow, I digress. I was going to this school. I was aware of Canada somewhat. I graduated when I was 17 when I graduated, but at the time I actually wanted to be an architect. So I applied to a bunch of schools for architecture school, and I got into two schools that are of significance. One was Savannah College of Art and Design, and that's in Georgia, in the US. And then I got another one that was UCT, which is University of Cape Town. So I was trying to make the decision between the two. And UCT accepted me, but it was, I don't know what you call it. It's like on condition. So it was like an exception, but like I had to provide a portfolio for them for the architecture stuff, and then I'd be able to go in. And they're also Southern Hemisphere, so they start in February. So like keep that in mind because that'll be relevant for the story. Okay. Then Savannah is like typical September to May type of like year. So I was thinking if I wait to go to South Africa, like it'll take a bunch of time and I'm not guaranteed a spot there. But then Savannah, Georgia, going there, it was gonna be 50,000 USD a year.
Damn.
Yeah. And then I got a scholarship from them, but it was like 10,000 a year. So it was still $40,000 a year. And like for my family, that was just way too much.
Yeah, you'd have to work your ass.
It would be insane to try and cover that fee, to be honest. And we were like trying to see how we could make it happen, but it just wasn't like a reasonable thing for us to do. It's harder when you're coming from like you're making money in like say the African countries, and then you gotta come spend USD. That currency exchange rate is not in your favor at all, right?
Wow.
So anyways, so Savannah didn't really work out, so I was left with like the UCT option. So I started putting together my portfolio. September comes, it goes by, I haven't really heard anything. Then November comes and they reject my portfolio, and I am crushed because this is my whole plan. So I graduated. So in 2011, I graduated May of 2011. So September 2011 has gone by. It's now November 2011, and I've just been rejected. So like I don't have a prospect. So like you were saying, you know how like you had the gap year after high school? I went into a gap year essentially. Yeah. So I had to figure out a plan for next year, but I didn't really know what that was going to be. So I ended up just working with my dad for a while. So I went to Zanzibar and I was just like working with him on his business, trying to help out where I can. Basically, I was an office clerk. Honestly, I was like somewhat good with computers as well. So like I could help out with like the record keeping and things like that. And so I was doing that for a while, learning my ropes and things like that. Then I did that for about half a year, and then I came back to Moshi to spend some time with my mom. So we were hanging out, and she's like, you know, like this college counselor is volunteering to help people who, you know, haven't been placed yet, who are in your year. You should go and talk to her. So I actually remembered her quite well. Her name's Beth Beveridge, actually. Shout out to her.
Beveridge?
Yeah, Beth Beveridge.
Cool name.
Yeah. Like their family actually had a pretty big influence on mine in the end, just through helping me like trying to find a place. But yeah, she was married to another teacher who was at my school as well, who had taught me chemistry. So like we had pretty good rapport, me and the husband. And then when she came on as like a college advisor, like he put in a good word for me and was like, you should try and help him out and blah blah. So she had actually helped me out with that whole Savannah stuff. I forgot to mention that earlier, but like Savannah and UCT, she helped me out with that. But then we lost contact when that fell apart. And then when I came back, my mom was like, remember her? Yeah, she's still helping people, like go and talk to her. So I went over there, started talking to her. She's like, okay, so what are your goals? Like, what do you want to study? And then during the gap year, I had a lot of time to think about that. Like, what do I want to do? And I realized like my skill set were in math and physics, and I wanted to find some sort of way to apply that. And of course, be in a career that would be high paying. So naturally, engineering became the choice. Just like, okay, so you want to do engineering? Let's look at the options for you. So she started talking to me about like going to school in the US, going to school in Canada for the first time, and I was like, I hadn't really considered that. And then the UK was obviously an option as well. So she's telling me about all these different options. And then she started telling me about the different schools in there. And two really stood out to me because they had co-op. So there was Memorial University and there was Carleton University, which is in Ottawa. And that also does like co-op terms. And so I was immediately intrigued, like, okay, so I have to find a way to cover the first year. But then after that, I can start to help support myself through co-op. So it was very attractive to me. And then I was like, okay, I'm interested in these two. Like when can I know more about them? And she's like, well, you're actually in luck because somebody is coming from Memorial University to talk about Memorial University here. And I was like, what are the chances of that? She's like, yeah, they're coming in like, I think it was like 10 days or something like that. I can organize it so you guys go to dinner and she talk to you and some of like the D2 students, which is the last year of high school. You can talk to all of them about this. So she comes, and I meet her, and she's cool. She's super helpful. Her name was Shauna. Shout out to her as well. She's a big help. And she's like, okay, so I'll put in a good word for you, like when you apply and all this kind of stuff. Like it'll go really smoothly. Like getting into school will be absolutely like it's no issue. And she was right because I applied. A few months later, I got my acceptance. They gave me a little starting scholarship as well. It put the school at a very like affordable range for my parents too.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
So it worked out really, really nicely. And so me and actually a couple people who were in D2, we all got that acceptance and we decided to all come out here around the same time. So now I know that I'm going to school there, and this is, I think, June or July, and I'm supposed to start in September. So I started the process of applying for a visa to go. So I need a temporary residence visa and I need a study permit. I applied for both, first time by myself, just like no help or anything, rejected. I'm like immediately deflated. I'm like, bro, what are the chances of this? Like I go through all these struggles, try and figure out a place to go. We finally landed something that everything will work out for. And then at the last step, they're like, no, you can't. So anyways, one of my friends, turns out she had gone to school immediately after high school. She had gone to Switzerland for school, but then she didn't like it. So she was going to transfer over to Canada to study something else. So she was also looking for a visa same time. And me and her friends, like we grew up, like I've known her since I was like 3 years old or something when I really started school. And her dad had heard my situation of like me having tried to apply myself and it not working out. And she's like, and he told her, you know what, invite him over and we'll talk about it. So this guy just invited me to lunch, and me, her, and her dad went to lunch and we just started talking. She's like, yeah, I'm trying to go to Canada as well. I'm about to start applying. We have a connect in Nairobi, which is in Kenya for those of you who don't know. Which is really close to Moshi. It's like 4-hour bus ride, something like that.
Oh, that's close.
And she was like, yeah, I'm going to be applying through this agent. And I was like, agent? Like how? She's like, yeah, there's these agents that help you make sure that the application is like tip top and that it won't get rejected by the time it gets sent over. And they have like a relationship with like the Canadian embassy somehow and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I'm definitely interested at this point. So we start working on the application together. And I had to go do a few things in Nairobi. So this is like the first time I'm like traveling away from home by myself to just go and do this shit. Yeah. I remember taking the bus over there to Nairobi for a while for like 2 days. So
scared.
It was a pretty scary experience. I had gone within Tanzania quite a bit, like going over to Zanzibar by myself or something like that, like a quick like day trip. Yeah. That's fine because like there's somebody on either end of that trip. Somebody's dropping me off at the airport or the bus, and then somebody's picking me up on the other side. So it's like you're not really by yourself for that long. Yeah. But this is the first time I'm going, staying at a hotel, interacting with all these people by myself. I don't even know these people really that well, you know. So I was it was pretty freaked out. But luckily, my friend's dad had already hooked it up really nicely, so that like the people that I would have to meet were like knew what I'd come there for, and like who to take me to next, and blah blah blah. So I did all of those things. I sent my application. This is now like August. So I'm like, if this application doesn't go through, I'm missing the start date for the semester pretty much. And then days go by. I don't really hear anything. They then message me and like, okay, but time for the next step. Like you need to come back to Nairobi to do your health check. As part of like the visa thing, the medical. So I go back. I do the medical again. I don't hear anything, and now it's like 1 week out before I'm supposed to start, and then I get something, like I get a call or an email or something like that to alert me that like there's a package for me from DHL. And I go in there, sure enough, I've been granted the visa.
Wow.
But now I gotta like basically wrap up my affairs because I'm losing hope at this point. I'm like, it's a week out, it's probably not gonna happen. I'm probably gonna have to go into like winter semester or something like that.
Oh, right, yeah, it was so close.
It was too close, so I was like, it's not gonna happen. Then it came, and then it was just like, yep, everything that you're doing now, like all your friends that you know now, blah, 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 like wrap up your affairs basically in a week. So managed to get a ticket, had to like basically just get all my shit together, know where I'm gonna end up in like Newfoundland, so I had to figure out accommodations and stuff like that at school.
Yeah, same.
Did all of that stuff super, super quickly. It's crazy what you could do when like the time crunch is on. And then it was like, okay, time to go. So I packed up. I remember I didn't even have time to process anything that was happening after I got accepted. That week just kind of like flew by as I was doing everything. Yeah. Then on the last day, I was, oh shit, I'm about to actually like leave home for Lord knows how long. Like I don't have a return right now. Yeah. I'm just going out there to figure it out.
Dude, I didn't take all of my summer clothes. I thought I wouldn't need that.
Yeah. Did you come prepared for the cold though?
I wasn't prepared.
I was absolutely not prepared, man. I remember I had like a hoodie on or something like that arriving in Newfoundland in September.
I arrived in May, but Newfoundland, May was still cold.
Yeah,
there was still snow everywhere.
Well, there was no snow in September, but I remember it being like frigid. Like I remember coming out of like the terminal and frigid weather, man. But anyways, so I arrived at like 4 a.m. on the day I'm supposed to be admitted into school. So I just ended up staying at the airport for like 6 hours waiting for them to actually open admissions.
Did you stay in res?
Yeah, but the res admission started at like 10 a.m. And I arrived at 4 a.m. that morning. So I was just like sitting there with my bags. But a lot of people were in this similar situation, which is interesting. So I met like some people who were from Brazil and stuff like that who had just come over as well. And then, then basically school happened. So the situation with the passport was actually the same situation I had. So like my study permit, my temporary resident visa, all of them expired halfway through the degree.
Yep.
Because that's just how long my passport was for.
It's tied to your passport.
So I remember having to go through that process. I had to go back to Tanzania, renew my passport, get the visa again. Come back out here.
I just reported my passport missing.
Yeah?
It was just easier.
Oh, damn, man. That's smart.
It was just easier to report it missing.
So then you just get a new one.
Yeah, then when I got a new one and got renewed, and I returned it, and then they put a stamp that says...
the extended date.
That shows that I have another passport now.
Yeah.
It was just easy. They told me to do that because I explained my situation, and then
they're like,
the person at the passport office was like, dude, just report it,
get rid of that, man.
And send it. Yeah. I was like, thank you.
Smart, man. So anyways, I'm now like in school, having renewed my stuff, renewed it. Then the first visa that you get, just so that this is like educational as well for people who are trying, the first visa that you get when you're in Canada is the temporary residence visa. Yeah. And then you get a student permit to go with that, like if you're gonna be in school. Then after the student permit visa, so I started with that. I ended up needing a co-op visa so I could work while as a student. And then after the co-op visa and all of that, and you're done school, you need an open work permit, so you can kind of work wherever you want.
That was a new one, by the way. It was.
By the time I was doing it was new?
Yeah. It only started 2010, 2011.
Oh, yeah, right around the time I would have come.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing in 2008.
Okay. Yeah. So, but when you were renewing after school, was that a thing already now? Like the open work permit?
No, you had to get one that was tied to like your program or something like work permit, and if you couldn't, you had to work on campus. So
Right.
I wasn't doing a co-op program, so I could
I
only
mean
work
like
on campus.
I mean like after school.
Oh yeah, it was a thing then.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a thing.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Then you get it open. So you do your school stuff with your student permit, your like closed work permit. So like all I was saying, like you can work at the school or you can work within your degree, and then after that, after you graduate, you have so much time. Like this study permit usually extends a little bit past your graduation date, so you can like you're got status still, but then you need to start working towards like an open work permit, which would allow you to work wherever you want, and then you might have to extend your visa, your temporary residence visa, because usually it's tied to when you're done school. So I had to go through those application processes. Then when I got that, it was like good for 3 years or something like that. I imagine, I think, can't remember specifically. But during that time, that's when, like from the previous episode, if you had heard that, I was like working for a startup and things like that. And they actually they became super clutch because they registered under a designated employer. So through them, they could quote unquote sponsor you applying for permanent residency. And then at the time too, a couple things came together because they introduced the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program, where they were trying to encourage people who had gone to school in Atlantic Canada to stay in Atlantic Canada. So they made the PR process easier for those people. So I actually missed an easy opportunity to do it. Right after school, they had like a 90-day period where you could apply through a graduate program. Like, so you just finished school, then you can apply and you can get your PR that way. But I actually gone traveling and then I went home, and by the time I was back, it was past the 90 days. So I couldn't even use that. So I had to go through like a skilled worker type application. And that's where like my startup came into play, because they helped me like, they basically said, yeah, this guy has a job here, he works full time, this is his career, this is the path we're thinking he's gonna take, and blah, blah, blah. And then I applied for permanent residency through that. And then once you have permanent residency, you don't even have to bother with permits anymore, which is like probably the biggest benefit. Like after you get to PR, things are a lot smoother after that. Whereas before, people are asking you, like if you apply for a job, they're like, can you work? Like, do you have legal status to work? You're like, yeah, I have a work permit. But that work permit has an expiry date. So even as an employer, they're like, should I invest in this person, or should I just get somebody who can definitely work here for a long time? You know, it just makes it a bit more difficult for them to pick you versus somebody else. So after getting PR, things get a lot easier. So yeah, I finally got that PR, and it wasn't like, it didn't lock me into Newfoundland. So it kind of opened up the rest of Canada in a way as well. Because I was kind of worried with the work permit when I moved. Like, what if it's hard to get a job here, for example? Then I'm kind of screwed. So I didn't want to risk it at that time. But once I had PR, I was like, you know what? Now I'm a lot more free to take risks and see how things work out. So yeah, I ended up taking that same risk, and I ended up here. Then recently I just started the application for like citizenship after 10 years, which is wild. Like, you live at a place for so long, and then finally they're like, okay, this guy's been paying taxes for like 10 years. Yeah, maybe you could get a passport and enjoy some of those benefits. But yeah, it can be a bit of a long journey.
To make, then. Tanzania versus Canada.
Then I've got a massive decision. Ola doesn't have the same conundrum. Nigeria luckily allows for dual citizenships, which I think every country really should, especially in this day and age. Like everybody's so international these days, so like why not allow that flexibility? But my country, Tanzania, does not allow for this. So if any Tanzanians are listening, lobby. We need dual citizenship. People go to the US, they study, they make money in the US, then they bring those USDs back. Like that can only just be a good thing for the country. I don't know why they don't allow that. Well, I know one reason, but anyways, it doesn't
They don't want
outweigh.
brain drain. Oh, we gotta do that topic someday. Brain drain of countries in Africa.
Yeah, and also they don't want too much foreign ownership. So like if you move away, like say I'm here in Canada now, but I own a bunch of houses there, and I can like leave my money there and things like that. Or say I'm like renting those houses, the money is actually leaving the country, not going into the country.
Okay, yeah.
So they're kind of like worried about that stuff, but I think they're actually worried about it in a bigger scale too, where people own buildings. It's actually kind of a similar situation we have here in Canada.
Vancouver, yeah.
We have a lot of people, like the reason housing is really expensive here is like a lot of foreign investors have houses here. And then they basically rake in the money and drive the cost of living up here, even though they don't live here themselves. You know, it can be a bit of a struggle. So yeah, anyways, for those reasons, I cannot be dual citizen. I'll have a pretty tough choice to make coming up shortly. But yeah, that was my journey to Canada, man. Some similarities for sure.
Yeah, very similar. It's interesting how when I was going through my passports renewal thing, it felt like a very unique experience. Like I was so frustrated because none of my close friends had that issue. So it's interesting to know that you had a similar issue as well.
Yeah.
I had to come up with like solutions, and like the Nigerian passport. I don't even know who the person was, but thanks to whoever that was.
Yeah.
You had to get clever.
They had to help you out.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy journey, man. I had to get clever many times to keep renewing, to keep making things happen.
And some things come down to a person, like an agent, or somebody working at the embassy, or something like that. It's really strange how these things happen. Like, it can so easily go left.
Oh yeah.
If somebody is like wanting to be in your way, they very easily can be in your way.
I had to learn how to dance around people's egos.
Yes, man, so much, man.
Yeah, I mean, I thank my my siblings for that.
Yeah.
When I was younger, they used to, anytime they needed anything from my mom, I was the one that they sent to get everything. I was always, they need anything.
The diplomat.
Yeah, they're like, go get it, go make it happen.
Yeah.
They don't, so from a young age, I never had to learn. It's now that I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, like it's hard for some people to do this, like negotiating.
Yeah.
It was always.
It's something that you had to do.
Yeah, it's second nature. Thanks to my siblings, they probably thought they were like, you know, let my younger brother go do this thing.
But you're picking up skills. You're picking up skills. Negotiation is a key skill. I don't know that.
That's how, man. I wouldn't be in Canada if I didn't know how to negotiate or sweet talk my way, whatever you want to call it.
I don't know if it's like a topic in and of itself, but it's definitely something I think we'll end up talking about as part of these discussions, because negotiation plays such a crucial role in so many different areas of your life.
Yeah.
And it's a very underrated skill to be able to gauge somebody, understand where they're coming from, learn like what your objective is, and like how to shape it in a way that it's a win-win for both of you, and all this kind of stuff. That played out in so many different scenarios throughout life, not just like trying to get to Canada, but like even trying to get a job and things like that. It always comes up, and I'm always happy to have had like earlier experiences to like try these things out and understand them a bit more. But yeah, like I'm missing like parts of the story, like details of the story, but people played like crucial roles in that. Like my friend's dad, for example, absolutely, like none of this would have really happened without him. Wouldn't really happen without like my college advisor and Shauna too, who was like the Memorial University representative. That was literally the first year that they had gone that far east in Africa. Like they had hit Nigeria before. There was some Nigerians at Man before I got here. They had hit Zimbabwe before. And this was the first time they went all the way east to Tanzania to like showcase. So like I maybe wouldn't have even had like that endorsement from somebody when I was applying. So timing and things like that worked out really well for me. And then all of this, like the visa coming in just in time for me to go, like a lot of really close margins in order to make something actually happen. So I'm always like, when things happen, even if it's bad news, like the UCT thing, now that I've gone through situations where like bad news has happened and then another door has opened, now I'm like a bit, obviously I get upset when things don't go the way I expect them to. But after that initial kind of reaction, I always try and remember some of these stories. Like, remember when this happened and you thought it was like the end of the world, but then it actually led you to this like other completely different path. Like with UCT or Georgia, if I had gone to that, none of them would have given me co-op. So I would have left school probably in debt, and a lot of debt at that. But because of co-op and all of that stuff, when I left school, I was actually in pretty good shape, you know? So like, when one door closes, another opens, man, every single time. So yeah, I like to think back to those moments and realize, you know, even if something looks terrible, chances are something better is waiting for you.
Interesting. Yeah, I still haven't seen my ex-girlfriend. That was the reason I came to Canada. We're still really good friends now. But yeah, I realized that Canada is huge. And Hamilton is not close to Newfoundland. And even Newfoundland is not close to Calgary, where my cousin was.
Nah.
I didn't see my cousin until 11 years after I was in Canada.
Damn.
That's how crazy everything was.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm glad. I still talk to her and tell her, I'm glad, she gave me the reason to come here.
Yeah.
And that's helped me in so many ways.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mention something when you asked me what gave me the idea to want to not school in Nigeria. I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
I had a lesson teacher who was not really a lesson teacher. He ended up being just more like a mentor.
Yeah.
Or coach, I should say.
Yeah.
He didn't teach me anything, but he was always giving me confidence. No, you know it. You can do it.
Yeah.
You can. Yeah. So it was. Part of the effects he had on me then was there was this Cadbury competition for kids to write letter.
Yep.
And then you go to London, and I was 7 or 8. Yeah. And he just told my mom that he encouraged me that I should write an essay because I was always really good at essays when I was young. Yeah. And he was you should write it.
Enter.
And you should go. And I didn't win. I didn't hear back from them. Yeah. But that just put that idea in my head. Yeah.
To compete
then the vision just became clear in my head, and I didn't shake it off ever after that.
Yeah.
So if
stuck to it and made it happen.
Yeah. If you never did that. Yeah. I don't know if whatever my goal would have been. Yeah. I still talked to my mom a few weeks ago about that actually. I told her because she didn't even remember. Yeah. I was like, you remember when this time? She was like, oh really? I was like, yeah. She was like, oh my God, I totally forgot. Yeah. I was like, I probably wouldn't be here without this guy. Right. And I have no contact with him anymore. I don't know where he is.
It's wild, man.
Yeah.
It's wild the significant role some people can play in your life, and you don't really know it at the time, but then later when you're reflecting, you're like, wow, that set me on this course of this path. And yeah, shout out to all those people. There's many more. There's a big list of people who have just had this sort of influence on both of our lives, trying to get us to this
change my life, man. Because he actually, I didn't like him. He was a strict teacher, and everyone didn't like him. Yeah. And I remembered when he talked to my mom, it was like, oh, this kid is bright, blah blah blah, but he's always troublemaker. Because I was bored. I didn't know that at the time, but I was just always anxious, just wanted to do something. I wanted to do something. Yeah. So it was just there was all this energy. Let's just divert it into something. So he started teaching me, and and it ended up being one of the best things that happened.
Well, shout out that guy as well, man.
Shout out, shout out to him. Yeah. Wherever he is now.
Wherever you are, we hope you're doing well. But yeah, man, that's our episode. That's how we got out here. As always, if there's a forum for us, I actually don't know how we're gonna roll this out yet, 100%. I don't know if there's some situation where they could write comment their stories and things like that. We could talk about it. But in case you can, comment and we will be engaged.
You think I'm joking? My tactic, or not tactic, but my plan to promote this is please don't listen to this.
Yeah, don't do it, man.
It's please don't listen to it.
But if you did and you made it this far, bless you, man. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, let us know if you listen to this part. Yeah.
And tell us your stories, Let us know kind of what your journey is, what close calls you had. Always happy to hear how people got here. I was excited to talk about this topic because I didn't know all the story to this degree. So it's good to hear how things worked out for you. And it's funny, the similarities in some of the cases as well.
Yeah, eventually, hopefully, this becomes a platform where we can find, people's journeys for certain things
100%.
Passports or work. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, man, I'd love to bring other people on here, how their career stories went as well. Yeah. Let's make that happen.
Sounds good.
Stay blessed, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
See you next time. Foreign Jams.